So I'm going to first start off by just kind of previewing this by saying, just tell me what worked. Tell me what worked. Tell me what didn't work. I know there's a lot of things that didn't work. That's a much longer conversation. But what worked for the Dolphins this year? Because at times, the Dolphins offense looked pretty good. Uh, Probably not for whole games, but for sections of games, for parts of games, for certain drives, especially when Tua came back from his concussion. Dolphins offense seemed to start to hit its stride a little bit. So, Anthony, I'm going to start off with you. Just tell me what you thought worked.
Well, one thing, all the things. What do you want?
Give me one thing that you thought worked.
Yeah, I only had 2 things on my list. So
Okay,
it's okay.
fair enough. All right, then give me both of them. Why not?
That's hilarious.
Yes, I kind of went. I didn't want to name too many players because I know we're giving player grades later. So I went towards more of like approaches or styles. And I mentioned this early on in the season, the swing pass. Like, we figured out the swing pass this year. Tua to Devon Achane, their timing was perfect. It led to lots of big plays, potentially our only big plays this year. And this is something that's not new to our offense. We've been doing a swing pass since Mike McDaniel got here, but this was the best it's looked all his tenure. All right, the timing being perfect on that play is so vital, because if Achane can catch that ball at full speed, he's not getting touched for at least until he gets a first down most of the time. So I thought, from a play execution perspective, the swing pass was dynamite this year. Really stood out to me as somebody who doesn't really typically notice plays that often unless they're egregious. But I noticed this one because it was good, and really benefited our offense in many ways, especially once Tua came back into the fold. It didn't work so well with the other guys, but we'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I had was getting a tight end involved. Mike McDaniel at his end of season press conference talked about how excited he was to have a tight end like Jonnu in the offense, that he could start to get underneath routes more involved, use the big body in the end zone. So Jonnu Smith, I know we've talked about a ton already on the show. It's just,
we couldn't heighten him up anymore, Anthony.
No, some of our MVPs, Jonnu was just fantastic this year. So I thought the other thing that worked really well was getting the tight end absolutely involved in this offense, at least one of them, because the other two are useless. But again, we'll talk about that later. But those are my 2 things that really stood out to me as things that worked in this offense, and my list for the other side was much longer.
Yeah, that is a much longer list. Taylor, what do you think, man?
I'm going to try to keep it brief, and I think that's why this segment works so well, is like to set the table for what's coming next.
Yeah.
I would say the methodical drives and not being so one play touchdown, while that's absolutely awesome and we love to see that in the highlights and all that, is not necessarily sustainable for December, January football. So us having more methodical drives, being able to at times run the ball, that was all really cool to see. Anthony, you mentioned Devon Achane and Jonnu Smith. We will talk about them later when we talk about grades. But it's a thing where I think that's probably where the positives probably end, aside from seeing Tua come back and really play smart football until we get to that Texans game. And a lot of the other stuff, I would say, belongs in the didn't work category. But
yeah, I agree. Teams took that deep ball away from us this year. They took that big play away from us. So it was incumbent upon Mike McDaniel, Tua, and the rest of the offense to kind of dial back a little bit. And as Hank Stram said, matriculate the ball down the field. Because if you're not going to get that big play from Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, or whatever, that's what you have to do. That's what you're forced to do in this offense. So that was kind of good to see them pivot. But the big play just kind of left this offense altogether, really, didn't it? And that's something that didn't work for me. Josh, give me some stuff that worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, really, there's not much on the offensive side of the ball that worked, right? And I don't want to beat the dead horse with a stick, but I will say this. Rookies was one word that I kept coming back to for both offensive and defense. I mean, because we're focused on the offensive side of the ball, I think, Jalen Wright, Malik Washington, Patrick Paul, bright stars, right? I mean, given very minimal opportunities in some cases, or in Jalen Wright's case, and Patrick Paul filled in admirably, showed that he could potentially be and has the tools to be the future left tackle for this team, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And Malik Washington, I tell you what, guys, he was a stud down the stretch for us as a wide out 3. I'm really thrilled that he's on this team. I was excited with what he showed in the preseason, and then we didn't see anything, so I was worried, right? I wasn't sure if he was struggling with the playbook or struggling with the speed of the game. But he just was biding his time and showed, you know what, when you call on me, coach, I'll be there. And he was steady. It was great.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's all right. This rookie class, especially in the offensive side of the ball, was one of Chris Greer's best. And I think, we kind of got into that last week with draft class and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
This was Patrick Paul showed promise in place of Teron Armstead. Absolutely. Jalen Wright, I like him. I want to see more of him next year. I want to see more of him, less of Raheem Mostert. And Malik Washington, I want to see more of him and maybe none of Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
We'll get into
spoiler alert, I have Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert as some of my off-the-team players. So.
Yeah. So let's get into – Taylor, I'm going to start with you on this one. What didn't work for the Dolphins? Now, I know this is a much longer list, so try and limit it to like 2 things.
Well, I think you guys are going to cover a lot, so I just want to keep it very brief. I got some team stats here from 2024 and 2023, and I think if you look at, like, for example, team offense yards, we were 18th in 2024. We were first in 2023. Team passing, we were first in 2023, 15th in 2024. When you go to rush yards per attempt, we are at 28th overall in the league this season. We were first last season.
Shameful.
I think just my general, like, what didn't work is just regress pretty much everywhere. Yards per attempt passing, we were second in 2023. I think only to San Fran. And in 2024, we are 21st. Like, that is just, you can't have that bad of a regression. And lastly, just to close off, and then I'll throw it over to you guys, offensive penalties. We were 16th most in 2023. We got even worse. We were 9th most in 2024. These are things that just you cannot see in the third year of a scheme that is supposed to get better and better. And what the promise is gets better and better over time.
Yeah, those were some powerful stats there, Taylor. I got to be honest with you, man. To your point about the penalties, and we've talked about this throughout the season, guys. Like, every time Devon Achane, for example, would bite off like a 25-yard run or a 30-yard run, I'm waiting for the flag. Where was Julian Hill, and where's the holding call on him?
Where was Robert Jones?
Where's Robert Jones, and where's the holding call on him? There was one point when Devon Achane pulled off like a 40-yard run or a 40-yard screen pass, something like that. Robert Jones got a holding call, and he was nowhere near. Like, he was not relevant in that play whatsoever, but he got a holding call regardless. It just felt like every time the Dolphins would get a big play like that, a hold was coming. That goes into the penalty. That goes into the average yards per play. Great stats there, Taylor. Love it. Anthony, what didn't work for you?
I felt like the only time Achane's big run didn't get called back was against the Browns. It was like, well, what's the point? It's like, So what didn't work for me? You all know this is coming. You know this is coming. Stop throwing the screen pass. For the love of God, the dang screen passes this year. Oh, my goodness. There's no such thing as setting up the screen in Miami. We use the screen to set up nothing. I don't know what we use it for.
That was just it. That was it. We didn't use it to do anything. We just used it.
That was the offense, the screen pass. Oh, my goodness. I couldn't even, I cringed thinking about it. Like, I know the second play of the game. Here comes a screen pass to Jalen Waddle probably, and he's going to drop it. Spoiler alert. It's just, It drove me crazy all season long. Screen pass here, screen pass there. Oh, 3rd and 1. Let's throw a screen pass. Oh my God, geez, I'm losing my mind. Okay.
It was always the two screen passes too. It was either the bubble screen to the wide receivers, Tyreek or Waddle, or it was that screen pass to Achan where he'll cut inside of whoever.
Oh yeah, like
usually.
the
Which, by the
angled
way,
route.
I actually kind of like that play design. I just wish they would have cut out one of these times.
Yeah, I wish they also would have not always had Julian Hill trying to block the defensive end on those plays because he sucks at everything that he does.
That was kind of the crucial problem, but
which brings me to my second point and why I mentioned the screen pass first. I mentioned the screen pass first because the screen pass didn't work all season long. Yet, we kept running it all season long. And when asked about it, Mike McDaniel said, no, the screen pass works. People just weren't doing their job. No, Mike McDaniel, screen pass didn't work because either you didn't have the personnel to run it, I don't know, or maybe they weren't trained to run it well enough, or perhaps they weren't executing. But it's your job to adapt, and the lack of adaptability from this coaching staff is my second point. Inability to adapt to anything on offensive side of the ball. I mean, a backup quarterback comes in, all right, let's adapt. Nope, let's run the same thing that we were just running with our starting quarterback, who is the most accurate quarterback we've had ever, maybe. The screen pass isn't working. Oh, let's go to a more traditional offense. Nope. Instead, we keep throwing more screen passes. Nothing this year from the offense really drove me more crazy than the fact that we just kept trying to beat that horse no matter how dead it was. It didn't matter if it didn't work. Mike McDaniel's overconfidence in his system and in his guys led to our demise this year. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Look at those numbers Taylor just threw out there. From 1st to 18th, 1st to 21st, 1st to 28th. Like, that is a complete and total lack of ability to adapt and to self-scout. Everybody else scouted you and knew what you were going to do this season, and you were unable to make any adjustments to that. And ultimately, that's why we ended up 8-9. Sure, some of the players didn't execute. Sure, we had a lot of injuries, but man, every team in the league could use that as an excuse. But the winning teams, they find a way to adapt and they find a way to win. This is not something we did.
Yeah. Well said, Anthony.
That was perfectly said, actually.
Yeah.
All right, and that's the show, ladies and gentlemen. No kidding.
I'll be honest. I don't have anything to add to that. It's just you're right. We just didn't adapt the screenplays. And the thing is like you can't, you throw the screenplay as many times as they throw it, the other team's going to expect it, and they're just going to sit on it. And that's what you would see. They would just. I knew this was going to be a hard show. This
hard.
That's okay though. It's okay though. Look, the good news is in a lot of the cases it can only go up, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a silver lining kind of guy.
I threw out those stats about how we regressed. You look from 2022 to 2023. Obviously, I don't have to throw it out there. There's a lot of progression there. We went from middle of the pack in a lot of areas to 11th and 10th to being 1st and 2nd in a lot of ways.
Do you think it's because McDaniel started feeling himself though? Look at how he came into the season. He's all doped out in gold chains and gold watch, and he's got these new glasses that are probably diamond plated or some crap, right? He's looking like a drug kingpin in Miami coming into this season. He's really feeling himself this year. I wonder if that played a part.
I think a big part of it, honestly, is that I mean, and maybe I'm giving McDaniel too much credit here, but I think, and we're going to get into this with the offensive line grade, so I'm not going to try and spoil anything, but the offensive line regressed even more this year than what it was last year. You lose Robert Hunt, you lose Connor Williams, you lose Isaiah Wynn.
Lose Austin Jackson, which is the reason our run game was just shut down completely.
Yeah, and then Teron Armstead, had his usual string of injuries.
Well, but he played the most games that he's played as a Miami Dolphins this season.
Yeah.
So I mean, and he was amazing when he was in.
Absolutely.
This has everything to do with personnel, in my opinion.
Yes,
and that is where I think Mike McDaniel crapped the bed.
Well, yeah, and I think that's where Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, I think they all crapped the bed. But I also think you throw screens because you don't trust that you can have a downfield passing attack with an offensive line like this.
And
that's what's confusing to me, though. Last year, we had the number one offense or number two offense. We were number one in yards per attempt. We were number two in yards over 15 yards. We were number one in throws over 20 in completion and number of throws. And Tua led the league in quickest release. So there is no reason. And this is where, and I know we've talked about it on the show, this is what was so frustrating and so confusing for me this season. Tua shows he can throw the ball. You can have a down the field offense with a bad offensive line with Tua behind center because he gets the ball out fast. He throws it up, and we have Ferraris on the edge. And for some reason, Mike McDaniel overcorrected. That's what it seemed like to me. It did not work in the first 2 weeks. So he's like, oh shit. We have to scrap all of this and scrap what worked last year and not fine tune it. We're just going to stop it all together. And we're going to do screenplays because that's what I feel comfortable with. And that's what is confusing to me with him. It's like he did a 180, overcorrected, and said, you know what? I don't have faith in everyone. This is what we're going to do. And it didn't work.
Yeah. And what the offensive line is adapting to what they had. Mm-hmm. Hey, we don't have the offensive line for a traditional get back there, throw the ball offense. So it's, hey, Tua, get the ball out quick to the Ferraris on the edge. And it worked. What really boggled my mind, and Anthony, I think you made really good points, is like, it's like McDaniel was just stopped doing what was working. Mm-hmm. And what brought him to the dance as not only a great offensive, not play caller, but a great offensive mind at San Fran with Kyle Shanahan. And now he's just, I think it's a great way to put it, Josh, he just overcorrected. Mm-hmm. And now he's going to the tight end, the screens, the running back, and you're sitting there going like, how are Waddle and Hill not getting yards? Because even bad teams get production out of great players. Mm-hmm. No offense to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals probably should have made the playoffs this season. They absolutely crushed it. They were not a good team, though, in a lot of ways, and they had a ton of production from their quarterback and wide receiver.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And teams still get yards.
And what's confusing with that is you use, and this is something, Anthony, you alluded to, you use the screenplay to set up those kind of plays. The problem is we use the screenplay to set up more screenplays. Mm-hmm. It was so confusing to me, Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so, I do think, sorry, Keith.
No, go ahead, Josh.
I do think for me, the one thing that hasn't been said that didn't work is really accountability across the board, right? There was none at all. You could point to David Long Jr. Okay, there, we released him because he didn't play well. Okay, that's when you look the locker room. Seemingly, granted, I'm not in there. We're not in the locker room. We're not media, so we don't have contacts, if you will. But for all intents and purposes, it seemed like this locker room was great together, but there was no accountability. And when you have your captains like Tyreek Hill taking himself out of games, and there is nothing said about it other than you're hearing Waddle, who's mic'd up or who got caught on a hot mic saying, Reek, where are you? You're not coming in? Okay, cool. Like, that's not okay with me. You have two on the sideline laughing and dancing when you're getting smoked, when he should be in, but he's not because he doesn't know how to not put his head first when he's trying to scramble. He doesn't know how to throw the ball away. There was regression in a lot of things. And that's what's concerning to me when it comes to Mike McDaniel. You have regression at the quarterback position from a decision-making standpoint. You had regression in the running back room, not because of Achane. He did everything he could. You had regression in the wide receiver room. You had regression on the offensive line. I mean, yes, Alec Ingold had a great year as her fullback. Jonnu Hill, Jesus.
Jonnu Hill is a hell of a hybrid.
No kidding. Johnny Smith broke all kinds of records. He was a stud. But there was just pure regression across the board on the offensive side of the ball. It was horrible to watch.